Hello and welcome to another edition of Bryan and Ryan, or Ryan and Bryan, depending on which member of the family favors you the most. It's good to be with you again this week. Episode 7, I believe. The viewership just keeps going down and down and down. I think this one last week saw, 5 people saw it? Great. Love you people. Thank you so much. How you doing, Ryan?
Good. It's Monday, but besides that, I'm good.
We do record on Monday so that we can drop it on Tuesday. So a lot of the things that we'll be talking about today start off, of course, with the Dallas Cowboys, who I've never been so depressed after a Dallas Cowboys win in my life, watching the gruesome ankle break of Dak Prescott after he had made a great run in the second quarter. And then we've seen these kinds of things before, and they always take the air out of the room. And that's certainly what happened yesterday when you saw. What was your reaction? I don't know if you saw it live or.
No, I did see it live.
And over again too, by the way, for a while. What was your reaction when you saw just how bad that injury was?
It was one of those moments where you just kind of, it doesn't seem real, because it's like if you saw it live, I mean, when they close up and he's holding his leg up and his foot is pointing the wrong way, and you just cringe and you're like, oh no. And really heartbreaking. I've got to be honest, and I've said this before, I'm not a Cowboys fan, but I do like Dak, and it made me emotional watching him in tears. Like, I don't know, I don't think you have a heart if that didn't, just hurt watching the pain. I mean, and Bryan, I don't know how when he got hurt, he was so calm. I mean, imagine, because it was a compound fracture.
Yeah.
The bone had broken through the skin, and he was very calm. Now he got very emotional as they carted him off, but just deflating. I can only imagine, as a Cowboys fan seeing that. But I mean, it was just so hard to see. And I think, we've seen through the years, you see some gruesome injuries. They don't happen a ton where they're that bad, but you just think about everything he's going to have to go through now to get back to, the player that he is. And it's a big blow for the team, but I just feel so bad for him because he's such a good leader and a good quarterback. And, he's on a 1-year deal. And, so just felt really bad for him, and it was a sickening feeling to see that.
The thing that we do need to remember, first of all, I've heard that the report was the surgery was very successful. They did the surgery on Sunday night, very successful. The rehab period now is 4 to 6 months, which is not devastating.
Right.
It's not, a lot of people want to compare this to the Joe Theismann leg break, but this is an ankle. This is not the femur, the big bones in your leg. And Dak Prescott is 10 years younger than Joe Theismann was when he got hurt. I was listening to a report this morning about Joe Theismann remembering the break when Lawrence Taylor hit him on a Monday Night Football game. When he healed, his leg was healed. It healed shorter than the other leg. So when he rehabbed, and then they had a workout for him, they said that, he did all the movement to the right, he did the movement to the left, but when he dropped back, he looked like Chester from Gunsmoke. He had a noticeable limp, and everybody left the field right then, and they knew it was over. I don't think that's going to be the case with Dak.
No.
I mean, I hope not, but the bottom line is, if everything goes according to plan, 4 to 6 months. So if you take it and go all the way out to 6 months, you're looking at him being able to do something in OTAs next year.
Mm-hmm.
Something. Now, that does not mean that he's going to be cleared 100% after he goes through all the rehab that he's going to have to go through and all that. But you would think, if everything goes to plan and he heals well and the workouts and the rehab go well, that he should be ready for the start of next year. So in the meantime, you wondered because at the same time, the Cowboys are dealing with this loss, and it's obvious. This is the thing that drives me crazy. people wonder about whether he's a franchise quarterback. Well, there's no doubt, based on the reaction of the people on that team yesterday on both sidelines, the national reaction, whether he's a franchise quarterback or not, he obviously is one of the most respected, well-liked players in the league. He has been nothing but perfect from a PR standpoint for the Cowboys as the face of the franchise. I mean, he's been a leader. He's been a leader in the social injustice movement without being abrasive and, insulting to people. He's been, he's given them everything you could ask for in the way of conduct, in the effort that he makes on plays. He's gotten better. He was off to a great start this year, especially considering how bad this defense is historically, to be able to put up the kind of points that they were putting up. So they're just going to have to get over it and move on. And then they had to immediately, after a couple of plays, regain their composure and then focus on winning a ball game. That they were down 17-3 at one time. He was in the ball game when they had the long drive to come back, and they played Dallas Cowboy football. They ran the football. They were careful with the football. They featured Zeke Elliott, and they scored a touchdown. They're back 17-10, and things are starting to look like a Dallas Cowboys team again. Now, going forward, you would think that we're going to see a much more conservative plan now for the Cowboys with Andy Dalton in the game. I thought Andy Dalton played terrific. And I kept thinking back to all those years that Jerry Jones and company just refused to put any money in a backup quarterback and got away with it. And then to have Andy Dalton this year, knowing that Dak's done for the year, and can you imagine what it would have been like to think, okay, Cooper Rush is going to be the guy for the rest of the season. Put a gun in your mouth and just blow the back of your head off. That's how awful it would have been. But, to give them all the credit, Giants are terrible, but Dallas got a win when they absolutely had to have it, and Andy Dalton was a major factor in that.
Okay, first off, I want to touch on Dak, and then I'll go into the actual Cowboys moving forward without Dak. I agree with you. He should come back and be fine. Medicine has advanced so much further. The fact that Alex Smith was on a football field playing yesterday shows you the miracles that can happen. And this injury is nothing near the Alex Smith injury.
It's gruesome.
It looked awful, but they had a successful surgery. There wasn't an infection like you saw with Alex Smith, and Dak, should be on the road to recovery, but it's going to be a long one. It's going to be a hard one for him to get back to where he wants to be, but I have no doubt that he'll get there. In terms of the Cowboys, you may think I'm crazy for saying this. I still think the Cowboys are the best team in the division, even with Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton probably, I'd have to go back and look at every single backup. I would guess he's probably the best backup quarterback in the league. There's no one that has more experience, wins, playoff starts.
And the division is a two-team division now. The Giants and the Redskins are non-factor, so it literally comes down to the Eagles and the Cowboys. And the Cowboys offense is worlds better than the Eagles offense. Defensively, we can have a debate.
But that's the thing. You still saw yesterday the Cowboys defense finally did make a few big plays, and that's because, the Giants and Washington's offense is even worse than the Giants' offense. They don't know who. Alex Smith goes in, and it was awesome seeing him in there, but he's throwing for 2 yards a pass attempt. That ain't going to win in the NFL.
And he gets sacked like 6 times, too.
Sacked 6 times. So the Cowboys are still the best team, and that's why it was so deflating for the team and a gut punch to see Dak, and you've lost him. But I do think that this is something that can maybe galvanize the team, that maybe this will be a turning point to where they're not going to sit there and say, okay, Dak's going to bail us out. They can't count on that anymore. They're going to have to play 4 quarters. The defense is going to have to start making plays. The offense will hopefully get back to running the football. We haven't even talked about, Bryan, though. The big news going into Sunday's game was that they lost their all-pro left tackle for the season.
So that's two starting tackles are gone. Lyle Collins
so
and Tyron Smith.
you're now without your quarterback and your two starting tackles.
Mm-hmm.
So again, those are huge blows, and you're not going to be the same. But despite all that, I still think they're the best team in that division. Andy Dalton is very capable. He definitely has the weapons. CeeDee Lamb, the guy does not look like a rookie.
No.
And Zeke, they got to feed Zeke, and I think that they can still get this done. They're not going to play Pro Bowl quarterbacks every week, and especially in the NFC East. So I have them winning, I think, probably 8 games, maybe 9 if the fortune's good. But that's going to be good enough to win this division. So.
Yeah, and the one thing I will say is I thought that Jalen Smith played his best game of the year. He was flying around like he hasn't done all year long. I thought the effort on defense was the best it's been all year long. Again, I know it's the Giants, but they were flying around. They were moving at a different speed than they have been the first 3 weeks of the year. I thought that the corners played a little better. And so defensively, there were some good moments. It wasn't just a complete disaster. And then I thought Michael Gallup, you mentioned CeeDee Lamb, but the 2 catches Michael Gallup made on the drive to get the game-winning field goal. I mean, first of all, they were absolute dimes by Dalton, and they were spectacular catches on the sidelines by Gallup. So when you think about the weapons that Dalton is surrounded with, you think if you just play average quarterback, you got a chance to win the ball game. So the unfortunate part about all this is next week, Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury are licking their chops because they see that Dallas defense.
Right.
If the Giants can put up 34 on you, you can only imagine what Arizona might be able to do with their offense. So,
and the big difference is going to be, and why I say the team needs to respond different. So yesterday, even when the Giants went up 17-3. I still thought that the Cowboys would come back because we've seen them do it this year. I didn't think the Giants' offense, 7 of those 10 points were a pick six. I didn't think the Giants would be able to sustain. If you get down 17-3, for example, to the Cardinals with Andy Dalton, I don't think you're feeling good about, we're just going to come back. So I think the Cowboys need to start having better starts. They have not had good starts all season. They even talked about that in the broadcast yesterday, that they need to have quicker starts. It looked like they were going to have a good start yesterday, and then they bogged down in the red zone. They have to kick a field goal. They need to start closing those a little bit better with Andy Dalton. So we'll see what happens. You're right. We didn't even, Gallup's last catch, he had 2 huge catches on that last drive, but that last catch was just amazing how he kept his feet in. You got CeeDee Lamb. Amari Cooper was an afterthought. He's your number 1 $20 million receiver, and he looks like number 3 sometime. Yeah. And we haven't even talked about, like, Wilson, who's emerged. So they have the weapons. They still have Zeke. I think this will motivate Zeke, too, talking about doing this for Dak. So, as bad as it is, look, it stinks losing a quarterback like Dak Prescott. They still can have a playoff season and get Dak healthy next year. So,
only other things I'm going to touch on the NFL, and then we'll move on. Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs lose to the Raiders yesterday. I think their week was disrupted by COVID-19 concerns. I'm not saying that you're not going to win every ball game anyway, but it was pretty impressive to watch the way the Las Vegas Raiders managed to find a way to kind of shut him down, force him to make some turnovers. It's a pretty uncharacteristic game.
You say shut him down, they scored 32 points.
Right, but he made some key turnovers, and you don't see Patrick much, but he made some.
Well, in fairness, Patrick has gotten really lucky this year. He's had 3 or 4 picks dropped right in the guy's hands.
Not yet.
But the Chiefs, the bigger thing yesterday, the Chiefs have been more impressive to me this year. Surprised me a little bit more was the defense has been so good. We know what Patrick's going to do. Their defense, but then yesterday their defense got exposed. But the funny thing is Derek Carr is not a quarterback that throws deep. Yesterday he threw deep. He had like 235 yards on 9 completions at halftime. So they were throwing deep. I don't think it's a big worry for the Chiefs other than – but – the COVID thing, you're having games. The Broncos-Patriots got bumped twice, and now it's next week. The Titans, we'll still see if they will play. This is going to be posted on Tuesday, if they'll play on Tuesday night. If there's another test, who knows? I think teams this year are just going to have to deal with it.
We've
It's going to
got
be
we've got like 7 games that have been rescheduled, and there's this trickle down thing where if one team gets it, then you're talking about affecting maybe 3 other teams, and games being played on Tuesday nights this week and stuff like that. It is going to be a year unlike anything we've ever seen.
yeah.
The only thing I was surprised by, and I've heard this said a few times, and I had to agree with it, you would think that because of all the insanity of COVID-19, people would be reluctant to fire their coaches. We saw Bill O'Brien get fired last week from the Texans, both as the head coach and GM, which is why he was made GM in the first place, I'll never know.
Right. Yeah.
And then yesterday, Dan Quinn and Mitrioff, the GM for the Falcons, are both gone. So, COVID or not, you get off to a bad start, you're not going to have your job.
Yeah, and the Falcons, I mean, let's be honest, the Falcons won. Bill O'Brien, I was a little surprised that they did it when they did it, just because they just made him GM this offseason. So they promoted him, and then they give him 4 games and he's out. The Falcons completely different. Most thought Quinn should have been fired at the end of last year. They never ever recovered from blowing the 28-3 lead to New England. They've never been the same. And honestly, you get your butt kicked at home by the Carolina Panthers, who were supposed to be in a rebuild, and Matt Rule has done an amazing job there through 5 games. Changes have to be made, and yeah, the Falcons. I think they waited too long. So I think they have a good owner, and he wasn't going to put up with it any longer. So
college football. Let's talk first off about Oklahoma, Texas, which I heard it described as the drunkest Oklahoma, Texas game. And you only had 25% capacity in the stadium, but all of them tried to get, like Texas fans were trying to go on the Oklahoma side and vice versa, and all that garbage was going on in the stands. But 53-45, Oklahoma beats Texas again. Sam Ehlinger finishes out his career 1-4 against OU. Rattler was benched in the ball game, came back to play. Just insanity. Blocked field goals. I go back to what I said last week, Ryan. Tom Herman's got to go. They've made no progress. They got rid of both coordinators. When your quarterback has to throw it, over 50 times and also rush for 123 yards, and not a single running back on the team got more than 5 carries. I mean, that's asking way too much of a kid to literally have to carry your entire offense on his shoulders. And he played magnificently, but he also made the killer turnover at the end of the game, the interception that ended it.
Yeah, I think the concerning thing about what year is this for Herman at UT? Is this
this is 4?
4, okay. So
actually maybe 5. I'm not sure.
So the amount of time he's been there, let's look at what this UT team has. There's no consistency on defense. I mean, occasionally they'll have a good performance. Most of the time they're giving up a ton of points. And like you said, offensively, the reality is they are Sam Ehlinger, and that is it. And if Sam's not playing well, they don't have a shot. And this whole team is all dependent upon one guy that is a, experienced senior quarterback. And the rest of the team, I'm not seeing where the playmate. This is Texas. I've never understood ever since I moved here how Texas isn't loaded every year. When you look at the talent alone in the state of Texas, how Texas doesn't have guys. I mean, the depth chart should just be full of kids with, just playmakers. And I always have these seasons where I'm like, where are the playmakers? Now, they did lose some receivers in the draft this past year.
Everybody does.
But yeah, everybody does, and they don't replenish it. And this team it's no different than when he took over. I mean, it's the same thing. He had a bowl win against Georgia a couple years ago.
Georgia was sleepwalking that night.
But they've gone downhill. They've gone downhill since then, and that's why last week when you were saying you were asking about Jimbo and Herman, I said last week that I thought Herman should be on the hot seat more than Jimbo, because A&M is in a much tougher conference, and I think they're doing as well as about what I would expect. A&M then gets a big win against Florida, but
Tap the brakes on that one. I'll talk to you about that one in a second. But
but
offensive
yeah, I
line.
don't understand.
Offensive line, 6 sacks they give up in the game, 10 tackles for a loss against an Oklahoma defense. I'm sorry, but the Oklahoma defense is not the Pittsburgh Steelers, okay?
They
they're
haven't been
better.
in a long time.
No, they're better, but they're not great, okay? So what you're looking at right now in the Big 12 is your top 3 teams are Kansas State, Iowa State, and Oklahoma State. The signature programs in your conference are Oklahoma and Texas. The only one that's been able to get into the playoffs since they've created it, Oklahoma, and they've lost 2 games in the conference already, so they're done. So I go back to what I said before. I don't see anybody from the Big 12 making it into the playoffs at all, and I really think Herman's time is done. As far as A&M is concerned, first signature win that Jimbo has had in his time at A&M. You can say what you want to about the 72-70 game against LSU, but LSU was a good team, but they were a 4-loss team that year.
Yeah, they weren't. That wasn't the same.
And was one of the worst officiated games in the history of the Southeastern Conference. I'm just going to say that from an LSU standpoint. Okay, but they finally got a good win. But Florida's defense is horrendous. Okay, Florida doesn't have a running game. Florida's a good ball club. Don't get me wrong, and that was a good win. But Florida's defense was not good, and A&M, even winning the ball game, they only had 2 plays of over more than 25 yards. Mond was 20, he was terrific. 25 out of 35, I think, 338, 3 touchdowns. Mond finally looked like what Mond does. Show it to me 2 games in a row. Okay, show it to me against 2 good opponents in a row.
That's what I was going to say. The problem for A&M is it was a great win for them, but their schedule is still really difficult, and I need to see it in back-to-back weeks.
Same here.
I don't know. I mean, they haven't consistently done that under Jimbo Fisher, so we will see. But we were joking before we started recording, and everyone was saying it. The SEC this past weekend, this season, it's starting to look like they're looking like the Big 12. The defenses just are not playing at a high level. The Alabama Ole Miss game, that's the worst. That was Alabama defense giving up almost 700 yards of offense. Right. LSU defense continuing to give up a ton.
I can't even explain LSU's defense, but Alabama's the one that was stunning.
Yeah, when you're seeing Nick Saban's defenses get lit up like that, it's just like, wow.
Now I got into a Twitter fight with Big 12 apologists, okay?
And imagine you getting into a Twitter fight.
I know. I've got to put the phone down. But they were sitting there going, "Oh yeah, well they're finally playing Big 12 type offenses." So yeah, now you're finding out. Well, let me just tap the brakes on this. First of all, you got a 10-year body of work of some of the worst defense in the planet in the history of college football. 10 years. That's a trend. Okay, the SEC had one bad day. Okay, if you show me 10 years of it from now, then we can talk. The other thing I'll point to is that when you look at the number of players on defense that get drafted into the NFL, LSU sent more players from their one team to the NFL than the entire Big 12 combined did last year. Okay, so there's a difference in talent. There's a difference in defensive linemen. I think it was an aberration. I do think there's something to the COVID-19 thing. Of course, everybody says that's an excuse, but I do think that SEC schools emphasize tackling and contact and things like that in practice. I'm not sure the Big 12 has done that in the last 10 or 12 years. It was a bad day, though. I'm not going to deny that. Alabama, Lane Kiffin did a great job. Alabama's always had trouble with really mobile quarterbacks and really spread out offense. Yeah. But let's also remember Alabama won the ball game 63-48. So while they gave up a lot of yards, they also put up 723, and that's without Tua.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. Tua leaves, and they're still scoring.
Now LSU, man, I have never seen a more confused, don't know where to line up, have no idea who you're supposed to cover. against a true freshman quarterback and a Missouri team that was down 3 receivers for COVID. And these guys, they weren't just gashing LSU's defense. They were 20 yards in the clear with nobody in the picture when they were making plays. Busted coverages all day long. Of course, everybody wants Bo Pelini fired immediately 3 games into the season. They got to get that fixed. Because if you're LSU and you got Miles Brennan, I was worried about him in first game, but he threw for over 420 yards and 4 touchdowns, and they put up 41 points. You ought to have enough to win the ball game, and yet at the same time, they're down on the 1 with a chance to win the ball game and 4 shots at it with all the time in the world and can't make 1 yard. They deserve to lose. That's all I know to say.
Yeah, I think that they have figured it out offensively.
I like Brennan. I think if it wasn't for Brennan and Terrence Marshall, the wide receiver who had over 200 yards receptions, they might have gotten beat by 30.
Yeah, but Coach O was pretty adamant the defense was embarrassing. So, but that was league wide. That was pretty much league wide this past weekend. So we'll see if it's an aberration. I don't know. Will it be a season-long thing because of COVID? Who knows? But Alabama still just keeps doing what Alabama does.
Listen, I think Alabama will get it fixed. I'm not sure LSU's is fixable this year. They're so young, and
they lost so many guys.
I don't know if Pelini just is too complicated or what, but they don't know what they're doing out there. Again, I want to see A&M do it. The thing A&M always has a real problem handling success. So I want to see them win a ball game and then not rest on their laurels. Come out and do the same thing next week instead of automatically claiming your national championship and putting another banner up already. Okay, but they had a great win. It was a great win against a good Florida team, a top 5 team. All I'm going to say, NBA Finals. LeBron and the Lakers win. They do it the old-fashioned way. They go out and buy a championship, just like they always do in Los Angeles. And so when you want to get into an argument about LeBron versus Michael Jordan played with the same organization. He didn't go out on a rent a team loaded with superstars 4 or 5 different times to get his titles. He stayed with the same organization built by drafts, signing a piece here and there. LeBron, he's a mercenary. He's like Deion Sanders. He just goes wherever and puts a team together that can get him a championship. Great player, deserves all that's said about him as far as how great he is, but it's just a different league now. I don't like the league the way it is now. I didn't even watch the finals.
Yeah, I'll try to be quick. We need to wrap up. But in terms of LeBron, first off, I don't like having the argument Jordan and LeBron because they're both amazing. Look, LeBron is one of the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
There's no denying that. I mean, I kind of laughed after the game yesterday. He's saying he wants his respect, and I'm like, what more respect do you want? I mean, you're unbelievable. But again, like you, it's just, look, and whether this is right or wrong, it's never going to feel the same to me as a Michael Jordan because Michael did it. When Michael went to the Bulls, they were terrible. They were not a good franchise. They went through the growing process of losing to those Celtics teams, losing to the Pistons, and then eventually got over the hump and became their own real dynasty. LeBron wins his 4th title. He left to go to Miami, builds a dream team. They win 2 titles, goes back to Cleveland, but goes back to Cleveland with another superstar and then gets another superstar to come to build another star team, win a title. And then Cleveland gets bad, so he heads to L.A., and then they get maybe the best player in the league besides him, Anthony Davis, to demand, I want to go to the Lakers. So, yeah, it's hard for me to get as excited about that. Look, they won the championship. Congrats. He's still one of the all-time greats. But I can't feel the same way about his championships as I do about Michael.
I agree with it. One thing I will say, congratulations to the NBA. They pulled off the bubble perfectly.
Amazing job.
The players made an incredible sacrifice to stay in that bubble as long as they did. Hats off to them for all of that. They did a fantastic job. I don't think you could do that in any other sport. Maybe hockey. They did a bubble there. But they did a fantastic job. They got their season in. The weird thing about it is, Ryan, is that championship was settled on October the 11th under normal circumstances. The next season would be starting in about 2 weeks. So
Right.
it's insane.
Yeah, and I think that's I think I've heard the NHL as well. I think you're looking at a January start date for the next season for both of those for both of those leagues. We'll see. But you think about one thing I'll say, and then we can wrap up. Those NBA players had to basically be in a bubble away from their loved ones, especially the teams that were in it for the duration. I mean, that is a long time. I know later in the playoffs they started letting some family members in, but imagine being away from your loved ones for that long. They could not leave the bubble at Disney World. They had to stay within their resort and those arena facilities. That's a long time to be basically. And look, I know people will come back and say, "Oh, well, they're these amazing hotels, this and that." I don't care if you're away from your loved ones that long. I mean, that's brutal. But hats off to the league and the players for getting it done. And the playoffs, for me, I enjoyed it. I didn't care about the finals that much because I really didn't care about the matchup. But the playoffs were fun. It really kind of brought sports back because I had been missing sports so badly. And it's good to at least we're getting to talk sports now on Monday. So.
Absolutely. I'm going to run long on this because I've got to say this. 2020 has been devastating to baseball Hall of Famers. I mean, we've lost Bob Gibson here in the last week, Tom Seaver, Lou Brock, Whitey Ford died just a couple of days ago, the all-time greats. And on Monday, October the 12th, one of the greatest players of my generation, when I started growing up watching baseball, Joe Morgan died. Joe Morgan, I remember when he came up with the Astros, he was a superstar then, and then they made the dumbest trade in the history of mankind to send him to Cincinnati and literally helped them build a World Series machine. And then they did get him back, and he took them to the playoffs with Houston again. 10-time All-Star, 2-time World Series champion on arguably maybe the greatest baseball team to ever be put together, the Cincinnati Reds, Big Red Machine. 2-time National League MVP, 5-time Gold Glove winner, Silver Slugger Award winner. The guy hit for power. He hit for average. He could steal bases. He played a great defensive second base, and he was the heart and soul of a baseball team. I don't know that you can find a guy that's much better player in history than Joe Morgan was.
And I will say, Joe played before my time. I didn't get to see him play, but I always knew Joe Morgan. I grew up with Joe Morgan calling Sunday Night Baseball. Yep. Sunday Night Baseball for me was Joe Morgan and John Miller.
That's it.
And I love listening to him. I always thought he was one of the best. It was sad for me when he left the broadcast team. But yeah, Hall of Fame player. I would argue Hall of Fame broadcaster. And sad to see another great go.
You could argue he was the greatest second baseman of all time. You literally could make that argument. All right, Ryan, appreciate your time as always. Happy COVID. It continues. 2020 continues to be undefeated.
Sure.
But I'm just like you. I'm so grateful to have any sports to talk about that. And now things will slow down a little bit because you won't have 5 different sports going on at one time. Now you can focus on the NFL and college football. And, prayers to Baylor. Are they ever going to get to play a game? Every time you turn around, these guys get shut down for another run of COVID. I don't know what's going on in Waco, but Chip and Joanna, you got money, man. You need to be throwing some kind of healing power on these people, okay? So, again, thanks very much to everybody for watching, all 5 of you. And please watch, share, leave a comment, call us idiots if you'd like. I'll keep saying ugly things about the Aggies just to get some kind of response. And Ryan, always enjoy visiting with you.
Yes, sir. See you soon.
Okay. That's Ryan Peterson. I'm Bryan Houston. It's Ryan and Bryan, or Bryan and Ryan, whichever you prefer. And we will talk to you next week.